A dirty girl walked into the boardroom with a briefcase. And what she said changed everything. Marcus Davidson never imagined his life would completely change on a Wednesday in March. As president of the construction firm Davidson & Associates, one of the largest in New York, he was used to tense meetings and decisions that moved millions of dollars. It was in the middle of the presentation for the company's biggest project that the boardroom door opened without ceremony. A girl with red hair and worn-out clothes walked in, carrying an old weathered leather briefcase. The 8 executives present froze as she walked straight up to Marcus, completely ignoring the security guards trying to intercept her. The child placed the briefcase on the polished glass table and looked directly into the businessman's eyes. Her voice was firm, without hesitation. "Your grandfather asked me to give this to you before he left," she said, pushing the briefcase toward Marcus. The silence in the room was deafening. Marcus felt the blood run cold in his veins as he recognized that briefcase. It was the same one his grandfather Anthony carried every day to the family's small woodworking shop decades ago. The same briefcase that disappeared along with his grandfather 15 years ago when he distanced himself from the family after a bitter argument. "How did you get this?" Marcus asked, his voice trembling slightly. The other executives exchanged confused looks. Benjamin Carter, the company's vice president, cleared his throat. "Marcus, we can call security to—" "No," Marcus interrupted, without taking his eyes off the girl. "What's your name?" "Emily Grace," replied the girl, wiping her nose with the sleeve of her faded blouse. "But everyone calls me Emmy. I lived with Mrs. Hope until she left too." "Mrs. Hope?" "She took care of your grandfather in his last years. She said he talked about you a lot, that he missed the family. When she got sick, she made me promise to deliver this here." Marcus opened the briefcase with trembling hands. Inside were yellowed letters, old photographs, and a sealed envelope with his name handwritten on it. The letters were addressed to him, but had never been sent. The dates showed his grandfather had written one each month during all those years of separation. The first letter he opened began like this: "My dear grandson Marcus, I know you must hate me for what happened. I had so much wounded pride that I couldn't accept your criticism about the woodworking shop." "Where did you get this?" Marcus asked, his voice now softer. "Mrs. Hope was a nurse. She met your grandfather at the hospital when he had a heart problem. Later she went to take care of him at home. They really liked each other, you know. She said your grandfather was the kindest man she'd ever met." Benjamin Carter approached Marcus's chair. "Look, this is very touching, but we have a presentation to finish. The investors are waiting." "The meeting is over," Marcus said curtly, closing the briefcase. "Reschedule for tomorrow." "Marcus, you can't—" "I said it's over," Marcus repeated, rising from his chair. He looked at the girl. "Emmy, can you wait for me outside? I need to talk with these people, and then I'd like to talk more with you." The girl nodded and left the room. As soon as the door closed, Benjamin exploded. "Marcus, have you lost your mind? Canceling a $15 million meeting because of a kid who appeared out of nowhere?" "You don't understand," Marcus murmured, flipping through the letters. "My grandfather, I thought he had wasted all the family money on the woodworking shop. That's why we fought. I said terrible things to him. That was 15 years ago, Marcus. You built an empire. You can't let yourself be shaken by ghosts from the past." But Marcus wasn't listening. In the photographs were images of his grandfather smiling next to a white-haired lady who must have been Mrs. Hope. In one of them, the grandfather was holding a baby in his arms. On the back was written, "Taking care of little Emmy, 2018. "He took care of her," Marcus whispered, more to himself than to the others. "Marcus, you need to focus on what matters," insisted Benjamin. "We have responsibilities to the shareholders, to the employees. You can't let yourself get carried away by sentimentality." "You all can go," Marcus said, putting the letters back in the folder. "I'm leaving early today." After everyone had left, Marcus found Emmy sitting on the reception sofa, swinging her legs that didn't reach the floor. She was looking at the high ceiling of the office, impressed by the size of the place. "Emmy, you said you lived with Mrs. Hope. And now?" "Now I'm at her aunt's house, Mrs. Joan, but she already has many grandchildren and doesn't have much space for me. That's why I came looking for you. Mrs. Hope said you were a good person. that your grandfather always spoke well of you. Marcus felt a tightness in his chest. How had he been so blind all these years? How had he let pride destroy the relationship with the only grandfather he had? Where did you live? In South Bronx, near your grandfather's wood shop. He still went there from time to time, you know. Helped the people who work with wood. What do you mean? The wood shop still exists? Of course it exists. There are a lot of people working there. Your grandfather said that one day you would understand why that was important to him. Marcus was silent for a long moment. All his certainties about the past were crumbling. The wood shop still existed. His grandfather hadn't wasted the family's money. Emmy, do you want me to take you home? Sure. But first, there's one more thing Mrs. Hope told me to give you. The girl took from her pocket a rusty key and a crumpled paper with an address. She said when you were ready to understand your grandfather, you should go to this place. Marcus looked at the address. It was in South Bronx, a neighborhood on the outskirts of New York, where he had never set foot. A world completely different from the elegant downtown offices where he spent his days. Do you know what's at this address? It's where Mrs. Hope lived with your grandfather, and where everything he left for you is kept. The drive to South Bronx was quiet. Marcus drove his black BMW while Emmy watched the city through the window. The farther they got from the center, the more the landscape changed. The mirrored buildings gave way to simple houses. The wide avenues became narrow streets. Here, said Emmy when they reached a dirt road. The blue house with the green gate. Marcus parked and looked around. It was a working-class neighborhood with small houses stuck together. Children played in the street. Some women chatted in their doorways. A world he had forgotten existed. The house was simple but well kept. Emmy opened the gate with the key and led him to the porch. In the backyard there were several plants and a small garden that someone kept with care. Your grandfather liked to work with the plants, explained Emmy. He said it was relaxing after a day of working with wood. They entered the living room, which was clean but empty. It was clear someone had recently removed the furniture. On the walls were marks where pictures had hung. Aunt Joan sold some things to pay for Mrs. Hope's funeral, explained Emmy, noticing Marcus's confused look. But the important things are in the back room. The room was small, with a single bed, a dresser and an old wardrobe. But what caught Marcus's attention was the wall full of photographs. Photos of him at graduation, at his wedding, with his children when they were small. Photos he had never sent to his grandfather. How did he get these photos? He asked, gently touching a photo of himself receiving a business award. Mrs. Hope would research you on the internet. She'd print the photos and give them to your grandfather. He would get so proud when he saw your achievements in the newspaper. Marcus felt his eyes well up. All these years, while he cultivated anger and resentment, his grandfather had been following his life from a distance, proud of every achievement. Emmy opened the dresser drawer and pulled out another envelope. This here, Mrs. Hope said, was very important. Your grandfather wrote it on the last day he spent with us. With trembling hands, Marcus opened the envelope. It was a handwritten letter in his grandfather's shaky script. My dear Marcus, if you are reading this, it means you have finally found your way here. I know you hate me for the stubbornness that drove us apart. You were right when you said I should have sold the wood shop and invested in something more profitable. But there was something you didn't understand at the time. The wood shop was never about money for me. It was about the people. Every piece of furniture we made carried a piece of our history, of our tradition. When you suggested I sell everything to invest in stocks, I felt as if you were asking me to sell my soul. But time has taught me that pride is a poison that destroys families. I should have explained my feelings better instead of simply pushing you away. I lost 15 years of my dearest grandson's life out of pure stubbornness. The woodshop still exists, my son. I transformed it into something greater than I ever dreamed. Go there and understand what I tried to build. It's not about wood. It's about lives. Hope knows the way. I love you more than you will ever know. Your grandfather, Anthony. Marcus had to sit on the bed to keep from collapsing. The tears he had held back for years finally flowed. Emmy approached and gently touched his arm. He talked about you every day, the girl said. He always said that one day you would understand that love is worth more than money. Where is the wood shop now? 5 blocks from here. Do you want to go? Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. The walk to the wood shop was a discovery. Marcus had never imagined those streets existed so close to the city centre. There were small family-run shops, a little square where elderly people played dominoes, children running between the houses. The wood shop occupied a large warehouse that had once been a textile factory. A simple sign read, "Anthony Davidson Woodworking, Furniture with History." When they entered, Marcus was amazed by what he saw. It wasn't the small workshop he remembered from childhood. The space had been transformed into a modern workshop, with several workbenches, where different artisans worked on unique wooden pieces. There was also an area dedicated to teaching, where young people learned traditional woodworking techniques. A man of about 50 approached them. He had calloused hands and smiled upon seeing Emmy. "Hi, Emmy. How's your Aunt Joan?" "Hi, Mr. Harold. This is Mr. Anthony's grandson, Marcus." The man stopped and looked at Marcus with an expression of surprise and emotion. "My God, it really is you. Your grandfather talked about you so much. I'm Harold Thompson. I've been managing this place for 10 years. "Managing how?" asked Marcus, still trying to process what he was seeing. "Your grandfather set all this up as a cooperative. We have 12 permanent artisans and 16 apprentices. We make custom furniture for the whole region. Your grandfather always said that one day you would come here to understand the project." "What project?" Harold led Marcus through the entire workshop, explaining how it worked. It wasn't just a traditional woodshop. There was a training program for at-risk youth, workshops for seniors who wanted to learn a new trade, and partnerships with local schools to teach craft techniques. "Your grandfather believed that manual work dignifies people," explained Harold, while they watched a white-haired gentleman teaching a teenager how to use a plane. "Half the people working here were unemployed for years. The other half never had the chance to learn a trade." "But how is this financially sustainable?" "Better than you imagine. Our furniture is unique, made with traditional techniques. We have a 3-month waiting list, and your grandfather left a fund that guarantees the maintenance of the social project." Marcus observed a group of women working on a huge table. One of them, a lady of about 60, was delicately sanding the carvings of a chair. "Mrs. Dorothy has worked here for 5 years, said Harold, noticing Marcus's gaze. "She was a housekeeper her whole life, never had the chance to do something of her own. Today she's our specialist in restoring antique furniture." "Hello," said Marcus, approaching the lady. Mrs. Dorothy looked up and smiled. "You're Mr. Anthony's grandson, aren't you? He showed your picture so many times. He was so proud of you." "He talked about me?" "Every day. He said you were a successful businessman, that you built a huge company. But he always added that one day you'd understand there are things more important than money." Marcus felt that tightness in his chest again. How had he been so blind? How had he wasted 15 years away from his grandfather because of a business argument? "Your grandfather was a visionary," continued Mrs. Dorothy. "He saw potential in people the world had forgotten. My daughter was addicted to drugs, lost in life. Your grandfather offered her work, taught her a trade, gave her hope. Today she has her own workshop in Queens." "How many people have come through here?" "Hundreds," answered Harold. "Some stay, others go on to start their own businesses. The important thing is they leave here with dignity and purpose." Emmy tugged on Marcus's shirt. "Do you want to see where your grandfather worked?" She led him to a workbench at the back of the workshop. It was the same workbench Marcus remembered from the original woodshop, but now it was in a special corner, surrounded by old tools carefully organized. "No one touches this," explained Harold. "Your grandfather left instructions for it to be preserved exactly as it was. He said one day his grandson would come to claim what is his." On the workbench was an unfinished project. It was a solid wood crib with delicate carvings of little birds and flowers. Beside it, a piece of paper with the name Great-Grandchild of Anthony written in careful script. "He was making this for my 3rd child?" asked Marcus, gently touching the wood. "Your grandfather always knew when your children were going to be born," said Emmy. "Mrs. Hope researched everything about your family. He followed each of your wife's pregnancies online. Marcus picked up one of his grandfather's tools, a plane he himself had used as a child. The memories came back like an avalanche. The afternoons in the workshop, the smell of wood, his grandfather's calloused hands teaching him patience and precision. "Why didn't you finish the crib?" "Your grandfather said he wanted you to finish it," answered Harold. "He said when you two met again you would work on this project together." The emotion was too much for Marcus. He sat on the stool where his grandfather used to work and began to cry. They weren't just tears of sadness, but of recognition, of regret, of love that had been suffocated by pride for so many years. Emmy approached and held his hand. "Your grandfather said tears cleanse the soul, that we shouldn't be ashamed to cry when we feel true love." "He was a wise man," said Marcus, wiping his eyes. "And you look like him," said the girl, smiling. "You have the same way of looking at things with affection." Marcus spent the rest of the afternoon in the woodshop, talking with each artisan, understanding how the project worked, seeing the passion each person put into their work. It was a world completely different from the corporate environment he lived in. When the sun began to set, Harold approached him. "Marcus, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. Are you happy with the life you've built?" The question took Marcus by surprise. No one had asked him that in years. People asked about profits, about expansion, about financial successes, but about happiness. "I never stopped to think about it. Your grandfather used to say that success without happiness is just a gilded cage." "He really said that?" "Often, especially when he talked about you. He said you had achieved everything you dreamed of, but that you seemed to have lost joy along the way." The words echoed in Marcus's mind the entire way back home. When he arrived at his apartment in the Upper East Side, a 300-square-meter triplex with a view of the city, everything seemed different. His wife, Jennifer, was watching television in the living room. She didn't even look at him when he entered. "You're early today," she said, without lifting her eyes from the screen. "Jennifer, I need to talk to you about something important. If it's about the trip to the Hamptons, I already cancelled it. I know you'll invent some last-minute meeting to not go." "It's not about the trip. It's about my grandfather." Jennifer finally looked at him, noticing something different in his expression. "Your grandfather? But didn't he pass away years ago?" "He did. But today I discovered things about him that changed everything I believed." Marcus told her about Emmy, about the letters, about the woodshop. Jennifer listened in silence, with an expression that mixed interest and skepticism. "It's a touching story, Marcus. But I don't understand why you cancelled a $15 million meeting because of this. Because maybe there are things more important than 15 million. Jennifer laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "Since when do you think like that? You always said financial success was our priority. Maybe I've been wrong all these years. Marcus, are you going through some kind of crisis? Because if you are, maybe you should see a psychologist. You can't make impulsive decisions that affect our family." "Our family?" Marcus looked around the immense, luxurious room. "When was the last time we talked about something that wasn't money, travel, or appearances?" "What are you talking about?" "When was the last time you asked me if I was happy?" Jennifer was silent for a moment. "Happiness is a luxury, Marcus. We have responsibilities. We have a standard of living to maintain. And if I said I want to change that standard, I'd say you've lost your mind." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of their two children, 15-year-old Daniel and 13-year-old Sarah. They entered the room glued to their phones, greeted their parents quickly and went up to their rooms. "Daniel, Sarah, can you come here a moment?" called Marcus. The two came down looking bored. "What is it, Dad?" asked Daniel. "I want to tell you about your great-grandfather." "The old man from the woodshop?" said Sarah. "You always said he was stubborn and lost all the family money." "I was wrong, very wrong." Marcus told the whole story again, showing the photos he had taken at the woodshop. The children listened with interest, especially when he mentioned Emmy. "Is she our age?" asked Sarah. "Younger than you. And she's been through hardships you can't even imagine." "Can we meet her?" asked Daniel, surprisingly interested. "Of course you can. In fact, I'm thinking of helping her in some way." Jennifer frowned. "Help how?" "Marcus, you can't just go around adopting abandoned children." She's not abandoned. She's staying with relatives of Mrs. Hope, but maybe we could help with education, with money, you mean? As always, your solution for everything is money. It's not just money, Jennifer. It's attention, affection, opportunity. Dad, Sarah interrupted, can I ask a strange question? Of course, honey. Are you happy? The same question Harold had asked. Marcus looked at the three of them, at the luxurious living room, at the entire life he had built. Honestly, I don't know how to answer that question. Daniel put his phone down for the first time in months. Seriously, Dad, what do you mean you don't know? When you were little, I was happy playing with you, telling stories, teaching you things. But over time, I drifted away, focusing only on work. I thought providing a good financial life for you was enough. But you're never here, said Sarah. When you are, you only talk about work or you're on your phone. And when we try to talk about school or friends, you always seem too busy, Daniel added. His children's words were like a punch to the gut. Marcus realized he had become a stranger in his own home. Do you want me to change? The two children looked at each other, surprised by the question. We want to know you better, Dad, said Sarah. Sometimes it seems like you're a different person at home and at work. And how am I at work? Focused, determined, always knowing what you want, replied Daniel. At home you seem lost, Jennifer sighed. Marcus, this is all a very nice conversation, but tomorrow you'll go back to the office and forget all about it. It's always like this. What if this time is different? Then I'll say you're having a midlife crisis and need professional help. The night was restless for Marcus. He stayed up late rereading his grandfather's letters. Each word revealed a man he had never truly known. His grandfather wrote about his reflections, about the importance of leaving a legacy beyond money. One letter in particular touched him deeply. Marcus, I know you've built a business empire, and I'm very proud of that. But I hope that one day you understand that our true legacy is not the buildings we construct or the money we accumulate. Our legacy is the lives we touch, the people we help grow, the love we spread in the world. When I'm gone, I don't want to be remembered for the money I left, but for the stories I shared, the hands I extended, the smiles I brought about. I hope you find that same purpose in your life. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the office with his mind buzzing with thoughts. Benjamin was already in his office, clearly irritated. Marcus, we need to talk about yesterday. The investors were very upset about the cancelled meeting. I already rescheduled it for this afternoon. Everything will be fine. It's not just about rescheduling. It's about your attitude. You can't let personal matters affect you during important meetings. Benjamin, I need to ask you something. Are you happy? Benjamin stopped shuffling the papers and looked at Marcus with a stunned expression. Happy how? We're partners in one of the largest construction companies in New York. We have everything a man could want. That doesn't answer my question. Marcus, where are you going with this philosophical talk? I'm trying to understand if we've built a business or a prison. A prison? You're talking about the company that gave us everything we have. When was the last time you spent an entire weekend with your family without thinking about work? Benjamin was silent for a moment. The demands of the business require total dedication. You know that. What if we could be successful without sacrificing our personal lives? Marcus, you're scaring me. Yesterday you cancel a crucial meeting. Today you come with these strange questions. What's going on? Marcus shared the discovery of the woodshop, about the social project his grandfather had created. Benjamin listened with growing impatience. I understand it was moving to discover this about your grandfather, but you can't let it affect your professional judgment. We are a company, not a social organization. What if we were both? What do you mean? What if we included social projects in our business strategy, professional training programs, affordable housing with a social purpose? Benjamin shook his head. Marcus, our business is building and selling high-end real estate. That's what we are experts in. We can't get sidetracked with social projects. Why can't we? Who says we can't use our expertise to help people in need? The board of directors, the shareholders, the investors, they expect financial returns, not philanthropy. What if we could offer both? The conversation was interrupted by Marcus's secretary. "Mr. Marcus, there's a girl at reception asking for you. She said her name is Emmy." Marcus smiled. "Send her up." "Marcus, you can't receive personal visits during work hours," protested Benjamin. "It's my company too, Benjamin. I can receive whomever I want." Emmy entered the room looking at everything with curiosity. Her red hair was combed, and she wore clean though still simple clothes. "Hi, Marcus. I came to bring something else I found at Mrs. Hope's house." She handed him an old notebook. "What is this?" "Your grandfather wrote down here all the people he helped over the years. Mrs. Hope said he liked to keep track of what happened to each one." Marcus opened the notebook and was amazed. There were hundreds of names with dates and brief descriptions. John Silver taught woodworking, opened a workshop in Newark in 2015. Mary Santos helped her get off drugs, now works in a furniture store. Charles Oliver gave him a job when he was unemployed 2 years ago. Now he's a supervisor at the factory. "There are a lot of people there," said Emmy. "Your grandfather always said the best way to measure a person's success is to count how many lives they helped improve." Benjamin looked over Marcus's shoulder and saw the notebook. "Impressive social work your grandfather did. But Marcus, we have the meeting in 2 hours. Benjamin, I want you to see the woodshop. I want you to see what's possible when you combine business with social purpose. I don't have time to—" "I'm not asking. I'm saying we're going." The trip to the South Bronx was tense. Benjamin complained with every block they moved away from the city center, worried about safety and the wasted time. But when they arrived at the woodshop, something changed in his expression. Harold greeted the group and gave the same presentation he had given Marcus the day before. He showed how the cooperative worked, introduced the artisans, explained the training program. "What's the monthly revenue?" asked Benjamin, switching into business mode. "Between $40,000 and $50,000, replied Harold. "And the costs?" "About $30,000. The rest is divided among the co-op members and reinvested in the social program." "Low profit margin," murmured Benjamin. "But sustainable and with a huge social impact," countered Marcus. Benjamin spoke with some artisans, asked about processes, analyzed the products. Marcus noticed that, despite his initial skepticism, his partner was impressed with the quality of the furniture and the organization of the work. "It's well structured," admitted Benjamin when they left the woodshop, "but I don't see how this relates to our business." "Benjamin, we have dozens of construction sites spread across New York. At each one, we employ hundreds of temporary workers. What if we created a permanent training program for those people?" "Go on." "Imagine if we had our own construction school, where we train bricklayers, electricians, plumbers. Not only do we have guaranteed skilled labor, but we also create opportunities for people in need." Benjamin was silent for several miles. "It's an interesting idea, but complex. It would require a high initial investment structure. We have the money for it. And we have the technical knowledge. Marcus, even if it's financially viable, why do you want to complicate our business model?" "Because I've discovered that success without purpose is empty." "Since when do you think like that?" "Since yesterday, when I understood that I wasted 15 years away from my grandfather because of pride and ambition." When they returned to the office, Marcus was determined to present the idea to the board. But first, he had a meeting with the investors to handle. The presentation went well. The numbers were solid. The project was ambitious. The investors were satisfied. But throughout the entire meeting, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about the woodshop, the people who worked there, the purpose that drove each of them. When the meeting ended and everyone left, Marcus stayed alone in the room. He looked out the window at the city below, millions of people chasing dreams, survival, meaning. His phone rang. It was Jennifer. "Marcus, Sarah is crying. She said you talked yesterday and now she's confused about our family." "Confused how?" "She asked me if we are happy together. What should I tell her?" The question echoed in the silence of the room. "Do you know the answer?" "Marcus, this isn't the time for philosophy. Your daughter is distressed and needs an answer. Then let's give her an honest answer." "What answer?" "That we are willing to try to be a real family, not just people who live in the same house." Jennifer was silent on the other end of the line. "You really want to change everything, don't you?" I want to try, Jennifer. I want to try to be the man my grandfather believed I could be. And what if I say I'm afraid of change? I'd say I am too, but I'm more afraid of continuing to live as we are. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. That night, Marcus gathered the family in the dining room. It was the first time in months they had a meal together without the TV or phones on. I want to apologize to you all, Marcus began. I've been an absent father and husband, not physically but emotionally. Sarah and Daniel exchanged glances, surprised by their father's frankness. I discovered some things about my grandfather that made me question everything I've built until now. And the main discovery is that he measured success differently than I do. What do you mean, Dad? Asked Daniel. He believed that true success was the number of people we managed to help, not the amount of money we managed to accumulate. Jennifer sighed. Marcus, you can help people and still be a successful businessman. You don't have to choose one or the other. You're right. But I need to find a balance. I need to find purpose in what I do. And what does that mean in practice? Asked Sarah. It means I want you to meet Emmy. It means I want to spend more time with you all. It means I want our family to have real conversations, not just about appointments and schedules. Can I make a suggestion? Said Daniel, surprising everyone. Of course, son. How about we start by doing things together on weekends? No talking about work, just enjoying each other's company. And I'd like to see that wood shop, said Sarah. It sounds like an interesting place. Jennifer looked at the children and then at Marcus. If you're willing to try, so am I. It was the first family dinner Marcus had truly enjoyed in years. They talked about dreams, fears, plans. The children talked about school, about friends, about things Marcus had never stopped to listen to. When they went to sleep, Jennifer approached Marcus. Are you really decided on changing everything? I'm decided on trying to be a better person. The rest we'll figure out together. I'm scared, Marcus. Our life has always been predictable. Change frightens me. Me too. But I've discovered that a predictable life without joy isn't a life, it's just a routine. And if it doesn't work, then at least we tried. It's better than regretting not having tried. The next morning, Marcus arrived early at the office with a plan in mind. He called a meeting with the entire board to present his proposal for expanding the company into social projects. The reception was mixed. Some directors showed interest in the possibility of diversifying the business. Others were skeptical about the costs and risks involved. Marcus, said Martha Fernandez, the financial director, I appreciate the idealism of the proposal, but we need to consider the return for the shareholders. How do you justify investing in projects that may not be profitable? Martha, imagine if we could reduce costs with outsourced labor by training our own employees. Imagine if we could access special financing by developing social impact projects. Those are assumptions, interrupted George Lopez, the operations director. We don't have concrete data to base this decision on. Then how about we start with a pilot project, suggested Marcus. We create a small training program, measure the results, and only expand if it's viable. Benjamin, who had been silent until then, spoke up. Marcus, I visited the woodshop yesterday, and I must admit I was impressed with the organization and quality of the work. Perhaps the idea is worth exploring. The meeting lasted 3 hours. In the end, they managed to approve the creation of a pilot professional training program with a limited budget and clear result goals. When everyone left, Marcus felt a mix of relief and anxiety. He had taken the first step to transform his company, but he knew the challenges were just beginning. His phone rang. It was Harold, from the woodshop. Marcus, sorry to bother you, but something happened here that I thought you should know. What was it? Emmy was here this morning, helping to organize the tools. She told the crew about your company, about the plans you discussed. Everyone got really excited. Excited how? They want to apply for the training program you're going to create. They think they can help as instructors, sharing the experience they have. The idea hadn't occurred to Marcus. The artisans from the woodshop could be partners in the project, not just beneficiaries. Harold, do you think they'd be interested in a formal partnership? I'm sure they would. The folks here have a lot of knowledge to share. Then let's schedule a meeting to discuss this properly. When Marcus hung up the phone, he felt an energy he hadn't experienced in years. For the first time in a long while, he was working on something that went beyond profit and business growth. In the late afternoon, he stopped by the woodshop to pick up Emmy. He had arranged to take her to meet his children. The girl was sitting in the workshop, watching Mrs. Dorothy restore an old dresser. There was something hypnotic about seeing those experienced hands transform a worn piece into something beautiful again. "Hi, Marcus," said Emmy when she saw him arrive. "Mrs. Dorothy was teaching me about sanding wood. It's harder than it looks." "She has the hands of an artist," said Mrs. Dorothy, smiling at the girl. "Reminds me of myself when I started here. Emmy, would you like to go meet my children?" The girl's eyes lit up. "Can I really?" The trip to Marcus's house was a continuous conversation. Emmy asked questions about everything, the buildings, the cars, the people on the street. It was as if she were discovering a new world. "Your house is very different from mine, huh?" she said when they entered the residential building. "Yes, it is different, but a home isn't just the place we live. Home is where we feel loved. My grandpa used to say that too, that the most beautiful house in the world is empty if there's no love inside." Jennifer, Sarah, and Daniel were waiting in the living room. Marcus had prepared the family to receive Emmy, explaining a bit of her story and asking them to treat her with special care. "Hi," said Sarah, approaching the girl. "You're Emmy? My dad told us a lot about you." "Hi, you're very pretty. You look like the girls on TV." Sarah smiled and took Emmy to see her room. Daniel followed them, curious to meet the girl who had made such an impact on his father. Jennifer and Marcus stayed in the living room, watching their children interact with Emmy. "She's adorable," said Jennifer, "and very smart. She's a child who has been through a lot of hardship but kept her sweetness. Her grandfather and Mrs. Hope took good care of her." "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What do you intend to do regarding Emmy? We can't just bring her into our lives and then disappear." "I've thought about that. I want to help her with education, healthcare, everything she needs, but without taking her away from her family. Aunt Joan seems like a good person. She's just going through financial difficulties. What if we offered help to the whole family?" Jennifer's idea surprised Marcus. It was the first time she had shown genuine interest in helping someone without expecting anything in return. "You would be okay with that?" "I would. More than that, I think it would be good for our kids to see that not everyone has the opportunities they have." From Sarah's room came the sound of laughter. The three children seemed to be having a lot of fun. "Dad!" shouted Daniel from the bedroom door. "Emmy has never seen a video game. Can I show her?" "Of course, son." "Never seen a video game," whispered Jennifer. "How is that possible? For someone who barely had food to eat, a video game is an unthinkable luxury." "Marcus, I'm starting to understand why you want to change our life. Looking at this girl makes me see how much we have and how little we appreciate it." Dinner was lively. Emmy told stories about life in the South Bronx, about the artisans at the wood shop, about Mrs. Hope and her grandfather. Sarah and Daniel asked 1,000 questions, fascinated by a world they hadn't even imagined existed. "Emmy," said Daniel during dessert, "don't you ever wish you could have things you can't buy?" The question took the girl by surprise. "Sometimes, yes, but Mrs. Hope always said that happiness doesn't come from the things we have but from the people we love." "And you believe that?" "I do. When I was with your grandfather and with Mrs. Hope, I was very happy, even without having much. When they passed away, I was sad even though I still had the same things." The girl's words fell like a bomb of wisdom on the family. It was an 8-year-old child teaching values to adults who had everything materially but had forgotten what truly mattered. "Emmy," said Sarah, "do you want to sleep here tonight? I have an extra bed in my room." The girl looked at Marcus, uncertain. "Only if Aunt Joan says it's okay. She gets worried when I don't come home." "Let's call her," said Jennifer, "and we'll take you back first thing in the morning." The call was quickly authorized. Aunt Joan was even relieved to know Emmy was being well cared for. That night, Marcus lay awake thinking about how his life had changed in just 2 days. A girl with a folder had turned his world upside down, and he was grateful for it. The next morning during breakfast, Emmy asked a question that left everyone thoughtful. "Marcus, your grandfather always said you were very smart in business. Was he right?" "I think so. Why?" "Then why did it take you so long to discover what really matters?" The question was simple, but loaded with meaning. Marcus realized that all his business intelligence had been useless when it came to understanding life. "Sometimes, Emmy, when we focus too much on one thing, we lose sight of everything else. That's what happened to me. But now you know what matters. I'm learning, and you're teaching me a lot." "Me? But I'm just a kid." "Children are sometimes the best teachers," said Daniel. "They see things more simply and clearly." After dropping Emmy off at Aunt Joan's house, Marcus went to the office with a detailed plan for the training program. He had spent the night sketching ideas, calculating costs, imagining possibilities. Benjamin was in his office when he arrived. "Marcus, I need to talk to you about yesterday. I spoke with my wife about our argument, about happiness and purpose." "And what did she say?" "That I'm always complaining about stress, tiredness, lack of time, that I can't remember the last time I was excited about a project." "And how do you feel about that?" "Confused. We built a successful business, but you're right. At some point we lost the passion for what we do." "Benjamin, would you be willing to visit other social projects with me? I want to better understand how this area works before we present our final proposal to the board." "I would. In fact, I'm curious to see if there are other examples like your grandfather's woodshop." The two spent the following week visiting different social organizations in New York. They saw professional training projects, worker cooperatives, microcredit programs. Each place revealed a new way to combine social purpose with financial sustainability. At a seamstress's cooperative in Harlem, they met women who had escaped extreme poverty through craft work. At a training center in Brownsville, they saw young people learning welding and woodworking, gaining hope and future prospects. "Marcus," said Benjamin after visiting a center that trained people with disabilities for office work, "I'm convinced we can do something similar, but it will require a mindset change from the entire company. Are you willing to lead that change with me?" "I am, but we have to be strategic. We can't just go to the board with idealism. We need numbers, projections, concrete examples of return on investment." "I agree. Let's put together a presentation that shows both the social impact and the financial viability." During that week, Marcus also spent more time with his family. Dinners without cell phones became routine. Weekends included activities together. Sarah and Daniel began regularly visiting the woodshop, helping Emmy and learning about manual work. "Dad," said Sarah one Saturday afternoon after spending the day at the woodshop, "can I suggest an idea for your project?" "Of course, honey. What if you created workshops where children and teenagers could learn woodworking on weekends, like an extracurricular program?" The idea was brilliant. Marcus hadn't thought about including children in the project, but it made perfect sense. "Sarah, that's an excellent idea. We can create a program that unites generations where older artisans teach traditional techniques to the young. And it would be a way to give purpose to children who don't have many options for constructive activities," Daniel added. Jennifer, who was listening to the conversation, approached. "May I make a suggestion too?" "Of course." "What if we included financial education classes in the program, teaching not just the craft, but how to manage the money they earn from the work?" Marcus looked at his wife with admiration. It was the first time she had shown herself to be truly involved with the social project. "Jennifer, would you be willing to coordinate this part of the program?" "Me? I don't have experience with—" "You have a degree in business administration. You worked at a bank before we got married. And more importantly, you understand the importance of financial education. It would be interesting to work on something meaningful again." The following weekend, Marcus organized a lunch at the woodshop. He took the whole family to get to know the artisans better and discuss ideas for the training program. Harold had prepared an informal presentation showing the different techniques taught in the woodshop. Mrs. Dorothy demonstrated how to restore antique furniture. Mr. John showed carving techniques. Mrs. Mary taught about wood painting. "Impressive," said Jennifer, watching Mrs. Dorothy work. How long did it take you to learn these techniques? A whole lifetime, replied Mrs. Dorothy, smiling. But the basics a dedicated person can learn in 6 months. And would you be willing to teach other people? Absolutely. Knowledge that isn't shared is wasted knowledge. Daniel and Sarah were fascinated by the manual work. Daniel tried to do a simple carving, and Sarah learned to use sandpaper to make the wood smooth. It's much harder than it looks, said Daniel, sweaty after half an hour trying to carve a small bird. But it's relaxing too, added Sarah. It's as if the outside world stops existing while you're focused on the work. Mr. John, the carving specialist, smiled. That's exactly it, young lady. Manual work is meditation. It calms the mind and strengthens the spirit. In the late afternoon, as they were heading home, Marcus asked the family, "What did you think of the experience?" "It was incredible," said Sarah. "I never imagined there was so much technique and art in something that seemed so simple." "It made me think about the real value of things," said Daniel. "A handcrafted piece of furniture has a story, a soul. It's completely different from something mass-produced. And it made me realize I have a lot to learn about patience and dedication," added Jennifer. "Those people have a wisdom you don't learn in college." "So you support the project?" "We do," said Jennifer. "More than that, we want to participate actively." "Me too," said Daniel. "I can help with social media, promote the artisans' work." "And I can help with the children who come to learn," said Sarah. "I know how hard it is to learn new things when you're young." Marcus felt his heart warm. His family was uniting around a common purpose, something he thought impossible just weeks ago. The following Monday, Marcus and Benjamin presented the complete project to the board of directors. They had prepared a detailed presentation with financial projections, examples of social return, proposed partnerships. "Gentlemen," began Marcus, "today we are presenting a proposal that can transform our company and our society. The Building Lives project combines professional training with social development." The presentation lasted 2 hours. Marcus and Benjamin explained every aspect of the program, the training courses, the partnerships with existing cooperatives, the programs for youth, the inclusion of financial education. The questions came in a flood, concerns about costs, about legal responsibilities, about reputational risks. "Marcus," said Dr. Augustus Peterson, the most conservative board member, "I appreciate the idealism of the proposal, but our primary responsibility is to our shareholders. How can we guarantee this project won't negatively affect our profitability?" "Dr. Augustus, the numbers show the project can be self-sustaining within 18 months. Furthermore, having our own training school will significantly reduce our outsourcing costs." "And if it doesn't work?" asked Dr. Lucy Sanders, the legal director. "We'll start with a pilot project," replied Benjamin. "Limited investment, clear goals, constant evaluation. If the results aren't satisfactory, we can shut it down without major losses." The discussion went on for hours. In the end, they secured approval for the pilot project, with a budget of $500,000 for the first year and specific outcome targets. When they left the meeting, Benjamin was smiling. "We did it, Marcus. Now it's time to roll up our sleeves." "Benjamin, thank you for joining me in this. I know it wasn't easy to change a mindset of years. To be honest, I'm feeling more excited about work than I have in a long time. I think you were right about finding purpose." The Building Lives project was launched 2 months later in partnership with his grandfather Anthony's woodshop. The first group of trainees consisted of 20 people, long-term unemployed individuals, at-risk youth, people wanting to change careers. Jennifer took over coordinating the financial education module, discovering a passion she had forgotten since she stopped working. Sarah and Daniel created a youth mentorship program, helping teenagers get interested in skilled trades. Emmy became a sort of project mascot. Her story inspired both instructors and students. The girl attended classes regularly, absorbing knowledge like a sponge. "Uncle Marcus," she said one day. She had naturally started calling him that. "Your grandfather would be proud to see all this." "You think so?" "I'm sure. He always said knowledge only has value when it's shared. Look at everything you're sharing." 6 months after the project launch, Marcus was in his office analyzing the first results. Of the 20 students from the first class, 18 had gotten jobs or started their own small businesses. 2 had been hired by Marcus's own company. More important than the numbers were the personal stories. Joseph Charles, unemployed for 3 years, now had a small custom furniture workshop. Mary Catherine, who worked as a housekeeper, learned woodworking and increased her income by 60% making custom furniture. The project had caught the attention of the local press. A newspaper article highlighted how a construction company was changing lives through vocational training. Other business owners began seeking out Marcus to understand how to replicate the model. "Marcus," said Benjamin, entering the room with a smile on his face, "I just got a call from the Municipal Social Development Secretary. They want to propose a partnership to expand the project." "What kind of partnership?" "They would provide the space and part of the funding if we agreed to train people referred by the public sector. That would mean a much greater impact." "Exactly. We could serve 100 people per class instead of 20. Marcus looked out the window, thinking of the possibilities. A year ago, his biggest concern was profit margins and market growth. Now he was considering how to expand a social project. "Benjamin, are you happy?" The question had become recurring between them. "Very happy. Yesterday my daughter told me I seem like a different person, that I smile more, that I seem more excited about life." It's funny how finding purpose changes everything, isn't it? It is. And to think that if it weren't for an 8-year-old girl with an old binder, we'd still just be chasing numbers. That night, Marcus got home early. It was Thursday, but he had decided to wrap up work early to have dinner with his family. It was becoming a habit he cherished. Emmy was there, as she was almost every Thursday. Jennifer had started helping Aunt Joan with some expenses, and in return, Emmy spent more time with Marcus's family. "How was woodworking class today?" Marcus asked Emmy. "I learned how to make joints. Mr. John said I have skillful hands for the work." "And at school, how are your grades?" "Very good. Aunt Jennifer helps me with math, and now I understand everything." Jennifer smiled. She had become a second mother to Emmy, discovering a maternal side she thought she had lost as her own children grew up. "Marcus," said Sarah during dinner, "can I make a suggestion for the project?" "Of course, sweetheart." "What if we created a specific program for girls? Often girls feel intimidated to enter traditionally male workshops." "Excellent idea. How would you imagine this program?" "Workshops just for girls on Saturdays, teaching not just woodworking but also how to be an entrepreneur, how to negotiate, how to value yourself professionally." Daniel completed his sister's idea. "And we could create a mentorship program where women business owners come to talk about their experiences." Jennifer looked at her children with pride. "You two are becoming amazing people, much more aware and empathetic than I was at your age." "We learned from you and Dad," said Sarah. "And from Emmy too." "From me?" asked the girl, surprised. "Yes, from you," said Daniel. "You taught us that happiness isn't about having a lot, but about valuing what we have and helping those in need." The conversation was interrupted by a call on Marcus's phone. It was Harold from the woodshop. "Marcus, sorry to call during dinner, but something happened here you need to know about." "What is it?" "We had a visitor this afternoon, a furniture businessman from Philadelphia who heard about our work. He wants to place a large order, but he has a special condition." "What condition?" "He wants part of the production to be done by the students of the Building Lives project. He said he wants to support the program by buying directly from those who are learning." Marcus smiled. This was exactly the kind of partnership he had dreamed of. "That's great news, Harold. We'll talk about the details tomorrow." When he hung up, the family was curious. "Good news?" asked Jennifer. Marcus told them about the proposal from the Philadelphia businessman. The reaction was one of general enthusiasm. "This means the project is really working," said Sarah. "More than that," replied Marcus, "it means it's creating a virtuous cycle. Skilled people, conscious business owners, quality products, positive social impact." "Your grandfather would be very proud," said Emmy, with that wisdom that always surprised them. "I'm sure of it," replied Marcus, feeling a peace in his heart he hadn't experienced in years. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, Please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. 1 year after Emmy came into his life, Marcus was preparing a special presentation. The Building Lives project had become a national model for corporate social responsibility. Business owners from across the United States came to see the program. Universities studied the model. The federal government wanted to replicate the initiative. But for Marcus, success wasn't measured just by the impressive numbers. 200 people trained, 85% employment rate, 15 new cooperatives created. The true success was in the transformation of individual lives and the change the project brought to his own family. That Thursday morning, he was at the woodshop attending the graduation of the program's 5th class. 40 people would receive their certificates, each with a unique story of overcoming adversity. "Marcus," said Harold, approaching him, "there's someone special in the audience today you should meet." "Who?" "A journalist from the national magazine who's doing a story on business people who shifted their focus to social impact. He wants to interview you." Marcus nodded positively, but his attention was focused on the graduates. There was Mrs. Constance, 58 years old, who learned furniture restoration and now supported 5 grandchildren with her work. There was also Jefferson, 19 years old, who left a purposeless life on the streets and discovered a talent for wood carving. "Uncle Marcus," said Emmy, appearing at his side in a brand new dress and shoes that Jennifer had bought for the occasion, "can I give my speech now?" "What speech?" "I prepared a tribute for you and for your grandfather. Harold said I can speak at the end of the ceremony." Marcus's heart warmed. Emmy had officially become part of his family 6 months ago when the shared custody process with Aunt Joan was finalized. The girls spent half the week with each family, thus having the best of both worlds. The graduation ceremony was moving. Each graduate briefly told their story, thanked the instructors, and spoke about their future plans. When it was Emmy's turn to speak, she climbed onto the small makeshift stage with a confidence that was impressive. "Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emmy, and I want to tell you about 2 very special men. The first was Grandpa Anthony, who died before I was born, but who changed the lives of many people here. The second is Uncle Marcus, who discovered that his grandfather was right about many things." The audience fell silent, curious to hear what the girl had to say. "Grandpa Anthony always believed that work isn't just about making money. It's about feeling useful. It's about creating beautiful things. It's about helping other people. He created this woodshop because he wanted everyone to be able to have that feeling." Emmy paused, looking at Marcus. Uncle Marcus took a little while to understand that. He was very busy making a lot of money and forgot that there are more important things. But when he understood, he didn't keep it to himself. He shared it with everyone. The girl pulled a crumpled paper from her pocket. "I found this note that Grandpa Anthony wrote one day. True success isn't how much you can gather for yourself, but how much you can give to others." I think Uncle Marcus learned that. The applause was thunderous. Many people had tears in their eyes, including Marcus himself. The simple wisdom of that child had touched everyone's heart. After the ceremony, while everyone shared a community snack, the journalist approached Marcus. "Mr. Davidson, I'm Paul Henry from Business Today magazine. I would very much like to talk to you about your experience." "Of course, it would be a pleasure." "What motivated you to completely change your company's focus?" Marcus looked at Emmy, who was playing with the other children. "An 8-year-old girl with an old folder taught me I was living life wrong." "How so?" Marcus told the whole story, from Emmy's unexpected arrival to the complete transformation of his personal and professional life. The journalist listened, fascinated, taking notes and recording excerpts. "And what was the biggest challenge in this change?" "Overcoming fear. Fear of changing a formula that was working financially, fear of disappointing shareholders, fear of failing at something different. And how did you overcome that fear?" "By realizing that the biggest failure would be to keep living without purpose. I understood that success without happiness is just a gilded cage." "Were your financial results affected?" "Initially, yes. The investment in the social project reduced our profit margin. But we quickly discovered that having our own trained employees reduced operational costs. Moreover, our reputation improved significantly, which brought in new clients. And your family? How did they react to the changes? Marcus smiled, looking at Jennifer, who was helping organize the event, and at Sarah and Daniel, who were coordinating activities with the children. My family found each other again. We discovered we were 4 people living in the same house, but we weren't a real family. When we found a common purpose, we truly became united. What advice would you give to other entrepreneurs who want to make similar changes? That they start small, but start. You don't need to revolutionize everything at once. One attitude, one project, one different decision can already initiate a complete transformation. And personally, how did this experience change you? Marcus looked again at Emmy, who was now teaching a younger child how to properly use a small toy hammer. I discovered my grandfather was right about everything. The real legacy we leave isn't the buildings we construct or the money we accumulate. It's the lives we touch and the people we help grow. The interview continued for another hour. The journalist was especially interested in also hearing from Harold, some graduates, and Emmy herself, who explained in simple words how happy people work better and make more beautiful things. In the late afternoon, when everyone had already left, Marcus stayed alone in the woodshop for a few minutes. He walked over to his grandfather's workbench, where the unfinished cradle still was. In recent months, whenever he had free time, he would come here to work on the cradle. It was almost ready now. Only a few finishing details were missing. "Grandpa," he whispered, running his hand over the smooth wood, "I hope you're proud. It took me 15 years to understand your lessons, but I finally got there." He is proud. Marcus turned and saw Emmy standing in the workshop doorway. "How do you know?" "Because when we do good for other people, the people who loved us feel it, even when they're no longer here." The girl approached and gently touched the cradle. "Who is this for?" "For the baby who will be born in 2 months." "Baby? What baby?" Marcus smiled. It was a surprise he had saved for the end of the day. "Jennifer is pregnant. We're going to have another child." "Really?" Emmy's eyes sparkled with joy. "I'm going to have another little brother or sister?" "Yes, you are. And this cradle that I started with my grandfather will be the first gift he or she will receive. Your grandfather would be very happy to know you finished the work you started together." "How do you know we started it together?" Mrs. Hope told me. "She said you helped your grandfather make this cradle when you were very little, that you worked on it over several afternoons, but never finished because you had a fight." Marcus fell silent, processing the information. He had no memory of that cradle from his childhood, but looking more closely, he recognized some carvings he vaguely remembered making. "Emmy, are you sure about this?" "I am." "Mrs. Hope said your grandfather kept this cradle hoping that one day you would make peace and finish it together. Since you never made peace while he was alive, he left it for you to finish alone." The tears came without warning. Marcus sat on the stool and let the emotion flow. They were tears of sadness for the reconciliation that never happened, but also of gratitude for the discovery of the love that had always existed. "Uncle Marcus, don't be sad. You did reconcile with him." "How?" "When you decided to continue his work, when you chose to help other people instead of just thinking about money. That is reconciling with someone." Emmy hugged Marcus, and the two stayed there for a while, in silence, surrounded by the tools and the energy of decades of manual work done with love. "Emmy, can I ask you a question?" "Sure." "How did you get so wise being so little?" The girl laughed. "I'm not wise. I just pay attention to the things adults say when they think a kid isn't listening. And what did you hear? That love is the only thing that really matters. That work done with love always works out. That family is who takes care of us, not just who shares the same blood. And that it's never too late to start over." "Who taught you that?" "Your grandfather and Mrs. Hope. They talked a lot about these things when they thought I was asleep." That night, during the family dinner, Marcus shared the news of the pregnancy with Sarah and Daniel. The reaction was one of complete joy. "I'm going to be a big sister," shouted Sarah, jumping from her chair. "And I'm going to be the responsible big brother," said Daniel, trying to sound mature. "And I'm going to be the middle sister," added Emmy, who had officially become part of the family. Jennifer smiled, touching her still small belly. "This baby is going to be born into a family very different from the one you were born into. A family that learned the value of being together, of helping each other, of having a common purpose." "Mum," said Sarah, "can I suggest a name?" "Of course, honey. If it's a girl, what about Hope, in honor of the lady who took care of Grandpa Anthony?" "And if it's a boy?" asked Daniel. "Anthony," replied Emmy without hesitation, "so that Grandpa's name continues in the family." Marcus looked at Jennifer, who nodded positively. "Then it's decided. Hope or Anthony Davidson." "Grandpa would be very happy," said Emmy, smiling. 6 months later, Hope Davidson was born, a healthy baby girl with dark hair like her mother and curious eyes like her father. The cradle made by her grandfather and finished by Marcus was waiting for her in the room lovingly set up by the whole family. On the day they left the hospital, Marcus carried his daughter to the cradle and laid her down gently. "Welcome to the world, Hope. You were born into a family that learned that love is worth more than money, that work is worth more than profit, and that helping others is worth more than accumulating things." Sarah, Daniel, and Emmy watched, moved. "Daddy," said Sarah. "She looks like she's smiling." "Babies don't smile in the first few days," corrected Daniel. "This one did smile," insisted Emmy. "She knows she was born into a special family." Jennifer, still tired from the delivery but radiant, approached the cradle. "Marcus, look what I found at the bottom of the cradle." It was a small envelope, yellowed with time. On the front was written, "For the great-grandchild of Anthony." With careful hands, Marcus opened the envelope. Inside was a short letter and a small key. "My dear great-grandson or great-granddaughter, if you are reading this letter, it means your father finally understood the lessons I tried to teach. It means you were born into a family that discovered the value of love, honest work, and solidarity. This key opens a safe hidden behind the third plank of the west wall of the woodshop. Inside, you will find not gold or money, but something much more valuable. Stories of all the people who passed through our workshop over the years. Keep these stories. They are the true treasure of the Davidson family. With all my love, your great-grandfather, Anthony P.S. The cradle where you are sleeping was made from the wood of the first tree I planted in the backyard of our house. Your roots are in the ground, but your dreams can fly as high as you want." Marcus needed to sit down. Even after passing, his grandfather kept teaching and surprising him. "What are we going to do with the key?" asked Jennifer. "We'll go to the woodshop to get what he left," replied Marcus. "But first, let's enjoy this moment. Our family, our daughter, our home full of love." The next day, the whole family went to the woodshop. Harold and the other craftsmen were curious about what old Anthony had hidden. The third plank on the west wall came loose easily, revealing a small safe embedded in the wall. The key fit perfectly. Inside the safe were dozens of handwritten notebooks. Each contained stories of people who had learned woodworking in the shop over decades. They weren't just names and dates, but detailed accounts of lives transformed, dreams realized, hopes renewed. "My God," whispered Harold, flipping through one of the notebooks. "Here is my father's story. I didn't even know your grandfather had written down everything about our family. There were notebooks from the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, decades of careful records about every person who passed through the woodshop. The last notebook had entries up to the week before Grandpa passed." "Look here," said Emmy, pointing to one of the last entries. "It's written about me." Indeed, there was an entry dated just a few days before Grandpa's passing. "Little Emmy, fiery hair and a heart of gold. This child will be key to bringing our family together. She carries within her the simplicity and wisdom my grandson needs to learn." Marcus read the entry several times, impressed by his grandfather's foresight. "He knew," he murmured. "Somehow, he knew you would be the one to bring us back together." "Grandpa was very wise," said Emmy simply. Mrs. Hope said he saw things other people didn't. They spent hours reading the notebooks. Each story was an example of how manual work could transform lives. There were accounts of former inmates who found purpose in woodworking, of young people who left drugs behind through work, of elderly people who discovered new skills after retirement. "Marcus," said Benjamin, who had arrived in the afternoon, "this is a historical treasure. It's decades of documented social work." "It's more than that," replied Marcus. "It's the project our Building Lives program should continue. Each of these stories is an example of what we can achieve." Harold approached with tears in his eyes. "Can I suggest something?" "Of course. What if we turned these stories into a book, a record of how manual work can change lives? It could inspire other projects across the United States." The idea was excellent. Jennifer, who had developed communication skills through the social project, offered to coordinate organizing the accounts. "It would be a beautiful way to honor your grandfather and Mrs. Hope," she said, "and to show the world there are different ways of doing business," added Sarah. 3 years after Emmy arrived in the meeting room, the book Building Lives Stories from a Woodshop was being launched in New York. The work brought together the stories collected by Grandpa Anthony, plus the new accounts from the Building Lives project. The launch took place at the woodshop itself, which had become a reference center for professional training and social development. Hundreds of people were present: former students, craftsmen, business people interested in the model, government representatives. Marcus stepped onto the small stage set up in the woodshop's courtyard, carrying little Hope in his arms. Emmy, now 11 years old and more articulate than ever, was by his side. 3 years ago, a brave little girl walked into my boardroom carrying an old folder, began Marcus. At that moment, I didn't know she was handing me much more than old documents. She was handing me a new chance at life. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. My grandfather Anthony left behind much more than a woodshop. He left a philosophy of life, that true success is measured by the lives we touch, not the money we accumulate. That honest work dignifies a person. That family is whoever welcomes us and helps us grow. Marcus paused, looking at his family in the front row. Jennifer, 6 months pregnant with their second child, Sarah and Daniel, now thoughtful and engaged teenagers, and Emmy, who had grown but kept the same sweet smile. This book tells stories of transformation, but the greatest transformation happened to me. From a businessman focused only on profits, I became a human being focused on purpose. And that was only possible because an 8-year-old girl had the courage to show me I was living life wrong. The applause was long and emotional. Emmy approached the microphone. "Can I say something too?" "Of course, sweetheart." Grandpa Anthony always said the most important people are the ones who help us be better than we are. Uncle Marcus helped me have a family, an education, a future. But I don't think he knows he taught me a lot too. The girl looked at Marcus with affection. "He taught me it's never too late to change, that true love is the kind that makes us want to help others, and that family is who chooses to stay with us through the hard times." Tears streamed down the faces of many in the audience, including Marcus. "Uncle Marcus, can I give you a present?" "What present?" Emmy pulled from behind her back a small wooden sculpture. It was a man and a girl working together at a workbench. "I made this in my sculpture class. It's you and me on the day we met, just like your grandfather always dreamed, a family working together, creating beautiful things, spreading love in the world." Marcus received the sculpture with trembling hands. It was delicate work, full of loving details. "It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received, Emmy." "I'm not finished," said the girl, smiling. "The real gift is this." She pulled a folded paper from her pocket. Marcus opened it and read silently. It was an essay written by Emmy for school titled "My Family." "My family is different from other families. I was born into one family, but I grew up in another. I didn't change families because the first one was bad. I changed because I found people who love me for who I am. My heart father's name is Marcus. He is a businessman, but not the kind who only thinks about money. He learned from his grandfather that helping people is more important than making money. My heart mother's name is Jennifer. She teaches math to poor children and helps me with my homework. She says anyone can learn anything if they have patience and care. My heart siblings are Sarah and Daniel. They are older than me and protect me when someone says I'm different because I'm adopted. They say family isn't about blood, it's about love. My baby sister's name is Hope. She was born into a family that already existed, but that included me. She will grow up knowing that love multiplies, it doesn't divide. I learned that family is who we choose and who chooses us. It's who stays with us when we are sad and celebrates with us when we are happy. It's who teaches us that we are important and special. Grandpa Anthony, who died before I was born, but who talks to me through stories, used to say that family is like a tree. The roots keep us steady, but the branches grow in all directions. My family has roots of love and branches of hope, and I am very proud to belong to this tree. When Marcus finished reading, he could no longer hold back the tears. It was impossible to imagine a purer, more sincere declaration of love. Emmy, you know I love you like a true daughter, right? I know. And you know I love you like a true father, right? Yes, I do. The hug that followed was photographed by the journalist present and ended up becoming the cover of the magazine on corporate social responsibility. 2 years later, Marcus was at the New York airport saying goodbye to a delegation of Japanese businessmen who had come to the United States to study the Building Lives model. The project had become an international reference on how to unite business success with social impact. Marcus's company had grown 300% in the last 5 years, but in a different way. Instead of focusing only on building luxury properties, they diversified into quality social housing, always including job training programs for the communities they served. Mr. Davidson, said the leader of the Japanese delegation through the interpreter, in our country we greatly admire the philosophy of uniting prosperity with social responsibility. We would like to implement a similar model in Japan. We will be happy to help, replied Marcus. But remember, the important thing is not to copy the model. It's to find ways to apply the same principles to your reality. What principles? That work dignifies people. That success without purpose is empty. That our responsibility as business people goes beyond shareholder profits. And that family and community are more important than individualism. When the Japanese boarded, Marcus returned home smiling. That night was Emmy's 13th birthday, and the whole family was preparing for a special party. At home, he found a scene that always moved him. Jennifer helping 4-year-old Hope with her homework, while little 2-year-old Anthony played on the floor with wooden blocks. Sarah, now 18 and a psychology student, was helping Emmy decorate the room for the party. Daniel, 20 and an engineering student, was assembling a small piece of furniture he had made in the woodshop as a gift for his sister. "The birthday person is here," shouted Hope, running to hug Marcus. "I'm not the birthday person, sweetie. It's Emmy." "But you were also born again the day you met Emmy," said the girl with that precocious wisdom that seemed like a family inheritance. The party was simple but joyful. All the artisans from the woodshop came, some former students from the project, Aunt Joan and her grandchildren. There was no expensive decoration or fancy food, but there was something money can't buy: true love. "Emmy," said Marcus when it was time for the birthday song, "I want to give you a special gift." He handed her a sealed envelope. "What is it?" "Open it and see." Inside the envelope were the official adoption papers. After 5 years of shared custody, Emmy was officially becoming a Davidson. "Does this mean that—" "It means you are officially our daughter, that our last name is your last name, that our story is your story." Emmy hugged Marcus so tightly he almost lost his balance. "Dad, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course, sweetie." "I always knew I was going to be part of your family. Grandpa Anthony used to tell me that when I was little." "What do you mean he told you? You were too little to remember him." "I don't remember him with my eyes. I remember him with my heart. He always said that one day I would have a big family full of love, and that I would help that family find the right path. And you did, sweetie. You saved us from an empty life." That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Marcus went out to the balcony of his penthouse in downtown New York. He looked at the city down below, millions of lights representing millions of lives, each with their own dreams and challenges. He thought about the journey he had traveled in recent years, from an executive focused only on profits to a businessman who understood that true success is measured by the positive impact we have on other people's lives. He thought of his grandfather, who always knew these truths, but couldn't pass them on because of the pride of both. He thought of Mrs. Hope, who tenderly cared for his grandfather's final years. He thought of Emmy, the brave girl who had the mission to reunite what pride had separated. His company now employed over 1,000 people directly and had helped train more than 5,000 people through social programs. But more important than the numbers was knowing that each of those people had a story of transformation, of renewed hope, of reclaimed dignity. "Grandpa," he whispered into the night, "I hope you're proud. It took me 15 years to understand your lessons, but now I know that family, honest work, and solidarity are the only treasures that really matter." A gentle breeze rustled the plants on the balcony. It might have been a coincidence, but Marcus preferred to believe it was a tender response from someone who had finally found peace in knowing his lessons were not lost. In the bedroom, he found Jennifer still awake, reading a book. "How was the farewell with the Japanese?" "Emotional. They want to implement a similar project over in Japan. Our philosophy is spreading across the world." "And how do you feel about that?" Marcus lay down beside his wife and smiled. "I feel like I'm finally living the life I should have always lived, a life with purpose, surrounded by people I love, working for something bigger than profit. You know I love you very much, right?" "I know. And you know I only managed to become this man because you were patient with me during the transformation. We transformed together, Marcus. I also learned a lot these years." "Learned what?" "That true love isn't just romance. It's complicity, it's growing together, it's building something beautiful to leave for the world." "And what are we leaving for the world?" 5 children who learned that success means helping others, a company that proves it's possible to make money by doing good, and hundreds of stories of people whose lives were transformed. Marcus fell asleep that night with a peaceful heart. For the first time in many years, there was no anxiety about the future, no regrets about the past. There was only gratitude for the present and hope for what was yet to come. End of story. And now, dear listeners, we would very much like to know what you thought of this touching story. Where are you listening from? Leave your sincere reflections on Marcus's transformation journey in the comments. Do you believe it's possible to reconcile business success with social responsibility? Which lessons from the story touched your hearts the most? We would love to read your opinions and personal experiences. Thank you so much for staying with us until the end.